In today's Religion Media Centre briefing, we'll be discussing a project, an ambitious project in Berlin to build something called the House of One, which is a multi-faith centre that includes a church, a mosque and a synagogue. And we know it's 10 years since the project began, and it's a very exciting week for you all this week because the foundation stone is being laid on Thursday. And so we're delighted to welcome Imam Osman Oers and Sophia Athie, the Director of Development from the House of One. And I wonder, Sophia, if I could ask you first of all, just to tell us how the vision began, what happened 10 years ago, and how has it taken so long to reach this point?
Yeah, so the original idea for the House of One happened soon after the reunification of Berlin, because and actually I have a few slides, if it's okay, I would pull those up. We thought we would give you a very brief overview of the project, so you have an idea of the architecture and how it's being built, and it's going to be very brief, and we can also go back to it later for more detailed questions. So I will just pull that up real quick. I promise it will be very, very fast. So first of all, the House of One is happening really in the heart of Berlin, in the middle of it, and actually where the original twin cities, Berlin and Cologne, were originally founded. And there were always churches. There were always Petri churches in different types, destroyed, rebuilt. Here on the left, you see the last ruin of the church.
Sophia, we can't see your presentation.
Oh, I apologize. So this is the slide you missed, just to show that this is really happening in the middle of Berlin, where Berlin was originally founded. There were always churches at this place, as the PETRIPLATZ, as we call it, different architectural types, ruined, rebuilt. This is a picture of the last church ruin that was later demolished in the 1960s and put into this lovely parking lot during the GDR time. After the reunification of Germany, the state approached the congregation that originally owned this space whether they would like to reuse it, if they have an idea for this place, the PETRIPLATZ, and they sure did. The idea was to rebuild a church, but to make it look like today's society. Berlin has changed a lot, and it needs to represent today's society. And so that was essentially the birth of the idea for the House of One, a house that would house a church, a synagogue, and a mosque under one roof. We then continued with an architectural contest, an international architectural contest, that was won by a Berlin office called Kühnmalvetzi. Here you see the idea of how this is placed on that side. I'm sure we'll get back to more architectural questions later, but I just wanted to show you what it will look inside. You see the ground floor here with the church, the mosque, and the synagogue. And the very special thing about the House of One is this room in the middle. We call it the fourth room. And it is really special because anybody who wants to enter the sacred spaces needs to go through this mutual space. The idea is to come together for people to connect, a room for dialogue. This is also the space where we invite people who do not belong to any of the religions or a different religion to come and have a dialogue, have exchange. Here you see a cross section of the building with the one floor and the three sacred buildings. You do not see the church on this image because it's behind here. The media response to this architectural draft was enormous. We had fantastic reviews. This has never been seen anywhere. A fantastic idea. A visionary, completely visionary and wonderful, far-fetched. Berlin gets the gold medal for its interreligious dialogue, Al Arabia. Nothing is being merged here, but something new and unprecedented is to be created. A theology without blinders meets an architecture full of curiosity. Or to sum it up, this house will be super. It was in fact celebrated by the architectural world internationally, and it kind of gave us a boost, and we were kind of overrun. I actually wasn't on board at the time, but the team, by also like a lot of support and interest all over. It was displayed in Chicago and Paris. Actually, the Victoria and Albert Museum bought this wooden model early on because they knew this was kind of like a special thing that was happening here. So it's in the collection. Here I would like to pass over to Osman to just give a brief idea of the life that you will experience inside the building, and already today, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Yes, you can hear me well, I hope.
Yes.
Yeah, so building this house of one, of course, is one of our main goals. But I would say that building the house itself and having a body is, of course, important, but is to have a soul, or not having a soul and a heart within it, makes it kind of meaningless, of course. And therefore, I would say that it's important to have a heart and a soul on which we can build the house atop. So having a heart and a soul, of course, is actually the most important thing, I would say, within our mission and our vision of building the house of one. And therefore, this is something which we try to embrace within our educational work, of course. And so we are in contact and in touch already with several schools, and go to schools and meet students and talk about our vision of peace and coexistence within the house of one. And yeah, but we are also aware that that it's not only important these days to have a physical body, I would say, but it's also important to have a look and be aware of the digital world and web and social media, of course. Why? Because this is a place where a lot of narratives we encounter today. And one of our missions, I would say, and responsibilities is also to fill up these digital rooms with positive narratives, with our visions of peace and coexistence. Therefore, we started just a couple of weeks ago, actually, with 3 wonderful women, a project, a podcast project, which we just started yet, and which will grow and grow and grow within the next years, I hope. So besides that, of course, we are aware of other parts and missions within the social media. But besides that, I think this picture shows quite nice, or quite in a good manner, that we are not only, that we have different kind of challenges. And one of our challenges and responsibilities actually is also that we are encountering liturgical and theological questions. And these theological and liturgical questions we have to be aware of course, and we also have to tackle, and we have to speak about and dive into it. It's something we can't just leave superficial, but we really have to are very sensitive of these matters, because this is something that we don't want to mix up our religions, and we are aware of syncretism, of course, and we want to keep all our faith and all our colors, if you like. The next one shows that, yeah, we have different kind of peace prayers, for instance, when we see the need of coming together and pray for peace. Yeah, this is also one of our responsibilities, and these are also things that touch our liturgical and theological mission. And then we are, of course, in touch with other people around the world, and that's something really important, I think, because we are not alone, and we are not the only ones who are peace builders, who are bridge builders between mankind and between people of other faiths. So we are in touch with three actually international projects. One is a Maison de la Paix, House of Peace in Bangui in Central African Republic. On the other hand, in Tbilisi, Georgia, we have contact with a Peace Academy. We are in touch with them, and also with Haifa, Israel, where a Garden of One is going to be built in the near future. And we are connected with these projects too. And yeah, lastly, right now, we are walking this way, we are walking this path together for more than 10 years, and we still have a couple of years in front of us. The path and walk is not over, but right now, alhamdulillah, thanking God, we are now on the verge of our groundbreaking. Just in 2 days, on Thursday, we will have our groundbreaking, and then we will start building the actual one. So far from my side, and we can talk later. Sophia, if you want to add something.
I have a question actually for you all, Sophia. Is this project unique in the world? You've spoken about the projects that you're engaged with in other parts of the world where people come together, but is this a unique centre where people worship in one building?
I would say it is unique in the way it is built. So it is the first, and that's something we can say, it is the first house of prayer and sacred building which is being built from the ground by Jews, Christians, and Muslims together. And in this sense, it is unique. And having these three sacred spaces and the fourth room, which is open, which is a neutral room and open for others, people of other faith. And within this architecture, it is something unique, I would say.
And another question, if I may, how much did the project cost and where did the finance come from?
Well, that would have been the next slide, but I wanted to open it. So here we go. This is to give you an idea that the construction cost is estimated around 47 million. And the federal government pledged to 20 million. The state is going to fund it with 10 million. And we're currently counting about 10 million by private and other contributions. And this is where my part kicks in, the capital campaign that is already undergoing, but there will also be a relaunch, and we will have quite some way to go to raise the remaining 7 million euros.
And where does that come from, Sophia? Is that trusts and foundations or individuals?
Actually, it's most the capital campaign. The 7 million to be raised.
Yeah.
Is that will be a mix of really everything. We have a grassroots capital campaign going on. We're currently counting donations from over 60 countries. The idea of it is people buy bricks, symbolic bricks, with which they help build the House of One. People give quotes with their donations. A brick is 10 euros. So obviously you can, we start very low because we just want a lot of people to be part of this and to have a chance to be involved. And the messages we get from all over the world are quite overwhelming. They're wonderful. And but needless to say, it will be very hard to raise a remaining 7 million euros in very small donations. So we're also looking into foundation support, individual giving, corporate giving. We already have a small circle of corporations that support the House of One, the construction cost on a yearly basis, and it all needs to grow. We need to be more popular. We need to have a relaunch, involve more people, but that is the idea of it, to have just as many people be part of this by making small and larger donations as possible. It's my favorite quote, and if you were interested in more images about the architecture, things like that, we have a few more, but we can go to them if we want to or not.
We may come back to that. Well, thank you very much. That's a very comprehensive presentation. It's great to see the pictures as well, and then envisage how it will work. Thank you very much indeed. I wonder if I could turn to our architect, please, who's joining us on the call, Daniel Leon. And Daniel, you initiated an architecture practice with the intriguing title Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I wonder if you could explain to us, is your project very similar to the House of One in Berlin? What were you intending to do?
Okay, sorry, just to quickly correct, the practice isn't called Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The project is called Friday, Saturday, Sunday. My practice is called Square Feet Architects, and it is a collaboration with 2 other architects. I might just jump in and share a screen as well, if I may. So yeah, this is a project that I initiated along with 2 other architects. On the left, it's Matthew Lloyd. On the right, it's Shahid Salim. And Matthew's Christian, I'm Jewish, and Shahid's Muslim. And we met in about 2009, 2010 at an event associated with the Three Faiths Forum, which I don't know if people know in London, which is a great organisation that was called Faith and Belief Forum now, I think, isn't it? But it started off with an inquiry that I kind of set up in probably about 2009, 2010, about how the faith needs of the athletes were going to be dealt with at the 2012 Olympics in London. And maybe Alex, I was looking at your bio before, so maybe you got some comment on this a bit later. So obviously the Olympics is coming together from athletes all around the world to London, and there's a cultural Olympiad, and it seemed a perfect opportunity, and maybe a perfect opportunity missed to bring people together. And there's lots of athletes of different faiths and beliefs, and an opportunity for them to get to know each other a little bit better as far as that's concerned. So we started cooking some ideas up, and what do architects do when they start thinking? They get out sort of their felt tips and yellow tracing paper, so this is us, deep in action. We all work in London. We all got our own practices in London. I'm from Manchester originally, but we feel that sort of London is a really sort of multicultural place for all the faiths. And we did a little kind of walking tour around, I don't know if people know, but Spitalfields in the centre of London. And there are 3 buildings there which are significant. On the right here is Bevis Mosque Synagogue, then there's Christchurch Spitalfield, and then there's the Brick Lane Mosque. And they're all built within about 20, 30 years of one another, and all got the same chandeliers. So maybe that's what the faiths actually have a lot in common, is their choice in light fittings. I'm not sure. But interesting, of course, Brick Lane Mosque was built as a church, and then a synagogue, and now a mosque. So that's a building that changed, and it's something that's always sort of intrigued, really. And Brick Lane, being living in London, feels a bit like to me. So that's a bit of Brick Lane Mosque. Actually, there's a remnant in the attic space of Brick Lane Mosque of when it was a photo I took of when prayers are, and then the sort of a donation plaque of when it was Hebrew classes. So just a nice little remnant of it being a shared place. Sorry, I might just jump ahead. So yeah, just about how Brick Lane feels a bit like sort of Jerusalem in London, maybe to quote Blake and all that. But that it's the landing ground for these 3 Abrahamic faiths over the centuries, and still continues to be so. Another little sort of interest was how multi-faith spaces are typically kind of by the loos in airports and hospitals and whatever else. And this image from I think Taipei Airport, I think, is quite good. You know, which door to heaven do you want to go through? I don't know. I quite like that.
Daniel, can you just explain the two projects? I think there were two projects you were telling me earlier that you initiated.
So right, so I'm getting to that. Sorry, forgive me. So this is the background for it. So we started developing an idea for a building, which was, and we looked at our three faiths, and the three of us architects are relatively devout and understand each other's faiths in a traditional kind of way. So we were pretty unyielding with regard to our requirements. This is a sort of what an architect does, and draws a plan, and we differentiated the religions with regard to orientation. We really found common ground with, you know, obviously our Abrahamic roots, but with regard to symbolisms of light, of liturgy, of ablution of water. But orientation was actually quite a significant differentiator between the two. Mosques, Islamic prayer spaces point specifically in London, specifically 119 degrees off north to Mecca. Synagogues point towards Jerusalem, and churches point eastwards. So that's the sort of a slight differentiator between the three. Sorry, and we sort of took the three classic sort of prayer space layout. So we've got a church space over here with the altar and the baptistry and the nave. In the middle, we've got a synagogue in the round, as the oldest synagogue remnants of synagogues sort of were. We're in the round with men and women either side, with the bima and the ark here. And then we've got the Islamic prayer space here, with men and women back and front, mihrab here at the front, and interceded these, and just this, and when this would develop the design. But the significant difference between what we have and what perhaps the building in Germany, in Berlin, is that we have one building that changes from, that is a very significantly, this one space that is a mosque on a Friday, then that space changes to a synagogue on a Saturday, then that space changes to a church on a Sunday. So whereas maybe the House of One has got three spaces which then come together in their fourth space, we've got one space which changes over time. So, you know, we could talk about space and time, and then there's Monday to Thursday, where it becomes much more sort of interfaith, let's say.
Daniel, has anyone actually taken this idea and built anything, or have you got near to constructing it anywhere?
So these are some images. So we haven't. This very much this is very much a festival piece, I think, as a pop-up. You know, we're not quite at. I think we've priced ours up at maybe at £100,000, a bit distance from 47 million. But it's an idea that it's built as a festival piece, as a pop-up, as a travelling Abraham's tent, goes from place to place, maybe up for a month or two, and a place where people can come together and get to know one another a little bit better. So we've developed. It was worked upon. Sorry, I was just referencing your lovely building there. But this was a project where we nearly built it. This is in Liverpool, where a TV company approached us and see if they looked at building it. This is, if people know Liverpool, this is Princess Road Synagogue. And Liverpool, if anyone doesn't know, has got apparently the most per capita people who, in a census, affiliate to a particular faith, and the most per capita places where place of worship. And there was this bit of land behind, and a TV company were going to do a cross between, I don't know, what can I say, Song of Praise and Grand Design, I'm not sure, and get us to sort of build on this bit of land, which was part of the synagogue, but let out to someone else. And we met some local faith leaders who were going to collaborate with us, which was great. And we developed a scheme for that. It didn't quite materialize because the TV company changed their tune. So that's taking this plan, which has become a little bit of a logo for us, if you like, and it was going to be built in plywood, and it was going to be a little bit like this. There was also an offer for it to be built in the forecourt of JW3, if people know that, which is a Jewish community centre in North London. In the forecourt of that, like this again, that hasn't quite happened. We're looking for sites. We've got some sponsorship, and I think it's a perfect opportunity for, particularly for festivals and particularly for student organisations, where where it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Let's kind of face it. It's not going to be the regular churchgoer who might go to here. Why do I need to go from my church to this place? I got my church. But this is people who are partly disenfranchised, not particularly necessarily connected to what they are, how they normally go, and this is a different kind of experience. Just to jump back very, very quickly. So we did a quick sort of sketch about how the program might sort of change handover between various organisations. So you can imagine there being a handover on a Friday night between, this is an example, say a Sunni and a Masorti organisation, and then maybe that's on Sunday night changes to a Baptist. So this was a very sort of sketch idea of different organisations, how they might share the space, and then Monday to Thursday could be school and food and music and comedy.
Thank you very much indeed. I think this is the cue for Bernard Ricks from CoExist House, because Bernard, you've been involved in various in this project to set up a house in the middle of London. Can you tell us, is your project the same? Does it involve worship, or how different is it to what you've heard so far?
Well, our project is not as well advanced as the House of One. I have had connections with Imam Oers before. Hello. And I congratulate him and Sophia on the wonderful realization of their project, about which I've learned more today. And I've also been fascinated to learn from Daniel about his project. Ours is rather like our project is rather like the House of One. We began actually by thinking of it as an Abraham house, although we now think of it more broadly as a CoExist house, to bring together people of all faiths and none to understand one another in coexistence and peace, the words which Imam Osman used repeatedly. We think of it as really, rather like the House of One, a significant public building, public space in the middle of London, this extraordinary international and cosmopolitan city, with the purpose being to bring together people of, let us say, all faiths and none, so that they can understand one another. I very much appreciate the concept of House of One, which is to put into one building separate places of worship, because I think it is only by visiting each other's places of worship, and I would also like to say visiting each other's homes in that context, that we can get a better understanding of one another. This is our ambition. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes for religious reasons, alas, we do not visit each other's places of worship enough. And people of different faiths do not visit each other's homes enough, because very often it's in the homes that some of the most special religious and liturgical events happen on a personal level.
Can you, perhaps sorry to interrupt, Bernard, but could you explain how far progressed your project is? Are you near to actually making it happen?
Well, I wouldn't say that we were near. I would say that we were in the position that the House of One was 10 years ago. There was a time when we had, from one person, the prospect of £50 million to build the building that we have in mind, but that faded. But we are, I must be careful what I say, I mean, there is a prospect that we can begin with something smaller than we would ultimately hope to aspire to, but with something in the very center of London in an important space, which will be supported by an important part of the City of London. And that is something which is under investigation. We perhaps we will have to learn to walk before we can run, but we certainly aspire to the ambition that I spoke of.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. I'd like now to turn to Alex Goldberg, Rabbi Alex Goldberg. 4 theologians we have on the panel now to discuss the challenges involved in creating these interfaith spaces. And joining us in this section will also be David Thomas, the Emeritus Professor of Christianity and Islam at the University of Birmingham, and a Canon theologian at Wells Cathedral, and an advisor on interfaith relations. The Reverend Jessica Foster from Queen's Foundation, Birmingham, also a lecturer on Christianity and interfaith engagement, and Imam Qari Asim, the chair of the Mosques and Imams National Advisory Board. And I would like to encourage you to talk to one another about this, but perhaps I can kick it off with Rabbi Alex Goldberg, because chaplaincies of this country do a lot of this interfaith stuff. And is it correct to say that they have already created multi-faith spaces to enable this to happen?
Yeah, I'm just going to run a 10-second video just to show you where I work, because it might help. I hope, if that's okay. And so this is my office, and these are the lights around it. We actually have symbols from 8 faith and belief traditions. I head up a team of 15 chaplains and 30 religion and belief workers. I'm going to stop sharing the screen in a minute, but this is actually my office and our prayer space, and I have actually 4 centres around the university. And I think what's really interesting is that we wanted to build a centre, I think £6 or £7 million 15 years ago, and then a recession came along. We only had £1 million in the bank, and we've created spaces around the university like that. And I think that we've also, I think universities in the UK, I'll get into theology in a moment, have moved on a bit since the Abrahamic model. And I think Bernard Ricks has just indicated that. So we now have a Hindu shrine within our centre. We also looking for spaces for the Sikh scriptures. We now actually have decided that we need a low church and a high church room. So we have an oratory which is very much Catholic and Orthodox in its outlook, and we have a low church which is mainly for our growing evangelical communities from around the world. And I think the idea is that in terms of chaplaincy, is we create a home for home. But I'm just very jealous right now of looking at the House of One. I used to live in Mitte, those who are from Germany, I used to live in Torstrasse, and I used to belong to a Jewish community in the area. And I think the quote, Das ist das Beste, which you put up, I think that's fantastic. And I love what you're doing. I'm just going to touch on the theology before others do. Having gone through this process with architects, there are theological implications of sharing space and sharing rooms. Our multi-faith centre had to go past the Archbishop of Canterbury, the chief rabbi, and you can't make these, it sounds like a joke, doesn't it? But Rowan Williams and Jonathan Sachs were very much involved and on board. And I think Cardinal Murphy, Cormac Murphy O'Connor was on board as well. And we had Sikh advisors and Hindu advisors. And part of that process was actually my own Jewish space going through the London Beth Din, the rabbinic courts for approval, and I got the ruling that it was not only kosher but beautiful. So I needed one of those. The first one, it was kosher. And I think that I think that actually using this space and using it together is a challenge. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, actually the building I showed you there was originally built in 1980, the shell was, with which came with the constitution. It said that the Muslims shout users on a Friday, the Jews on a Saturday, and the Christians on a Sunday. But these days, that one room has 40 to 50 hours of activity, or did before COVID. It's going back up. We're about 20 hours a week now, and that's during COVID, which with social distancing. We also have an Islamic prayer room separately because that's used 5 times a day. And that's some of the challenges you have. If you have an active community that wants to pray 5 times a day, 7 days a week, you need space for that. If you have Christian communities that want to meet for Bible studies, and the more evangelical those communities are, they're not necessarily going to meet on a Sunday any longer. They're going to have Bible classes and prayer circles throughout the week. Jewish community, if they're Orthodox, they're going to meet 3 times a week. If they're not, they're going to meet on that Friday, Saturday. So it is trying to create that space and create a sense of community. And I think actually it's the negotiation of space and the negotiation of community, which is really important. And that's what the House of One will go through. When you cut that ribbon, that's the beginning of your journey. I know Sophia is looking for 7 million euros. That's a big, she's hoping that's going to be the end of her journey. But I think it's a really exciting thing. And the fact that we have such a big chaplaincy of 15, 30 people, we meet once a week for half an hour to discuss how our centres run, discuss issues on campus, discuss issues, well, in the last couple of weeks around the world, is really, really important. And I think those relationships between communities is vital, between community leaders is vital, and between each other. And I'll end on 2 theological points. One in Hebrew is that the word for peace is shalom, and the word for wholeness is shalem. And I think by doing the House of One or the project that we saw from Daniel Leon, maybe that creates some sort of completeness in a community where you have an Abrahamic community living one on top of the other, or maybe you have the Dharmic faith as well. Maybe you have 8 faiths. Actually creating those communities and spaces and negotiating it is going to help. Many of those communities want to change the environment and the community, and they can be an act of good in terms of social good, in terms of changing the environment of that community. And actually, we've worked out at the University of Surrey that working together produces real change, not just for our students and staff, but actually for the town as well. And secondly, I'm going to say this. I'm going to end with a quick story. There's a guy called Oni the Circle Maker, and Oni, in the Talmud, Oni is a miracle worker of some sort, post-prophetic, and he comes across an old man who is planting a tree, and he says, "How long will that tree take fruit to bear?" And the old man goes, 70 years. And Oni says, "And do you think you're going to live another 70 years to see that tree, which is a carob tree, bear fruit?" And he goes, the old man says, "Perhaps not." And Oni goes, why are you planting that tree?" And he says, "When I was born into this world, I found many carob trees planted by my father and my grandfather. And just as they planted trees for me, I'm planting trees for my children and grandchildren, so they were able to eat for those fruits of the trees." And I think what all the 3 projects we've seen today are doing are planting those seeds of those carob trees, so that we hope to live together in peace and prosperity and with good community relations in 50, 60, 70 years hence. And I think I wish you all the best of luck. I've been charmed and enlightened by everything you're doing.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for your story as well. I saw Jessica nodding her head in that contribution. Jessica, could I come to you next and ask for your reflection in your own work and what you're seeing around you?
Thank you. So I teach interfaith, but really my passion and my background is in grassroots interfaith work in the city of Birmingham, particularly with women. It's obviously listening to what's been spoken about today has really made me reflect, because we don't have a space, and we operate from various either secular spaces, or actually the church that I was based in is a space we use. But I'm thrilled by the idea of the House of One, and we'd sort of had dreams actually when we heard that the Waitrose on our high street was closing, and we thought, I wonder if we could have it for the St. Faiths, or actually for more than 3 probably. And I think our focus rather than space is actually on community activity. So my kind of interfaith work is based around identifying the passions of people from different communities, identifying kind of what they want to see better, you know, the healing of the community, the nation, the shalom of the area, and what we can then do together that we couldn't maybe have managed to do apart, and to find resources for each other, and to enable community action that takes place as people of faith, but people of different faiths.
Can I just interrupt, Jessica, and just ask you what difference it would make if you were to have a building that you could do your work from? Would it change the nature of your work? Would it enhance it?
I think it would, yeah. I think, I mean, particularly as someone in the Church of England, I'm very aware of the power imbalance of being the host all the time. And my church, actually, in Hall Green, I should have had a picture ready, has beautiful prayer mats around the wall. It was built 50 years ago, just over, and no one's quite sure why it ended up with this 12 images, stained glass images of prayer mats from the Coptic Christian and the Muslim tradition. So it has an element of hospitality within itself. But obviously, as an Anglican church, we're very aware of always being host, and we're very keen to be guests. So I think what's exciting about Place of One and other projects like that is that they come together right from the start, right from the first foundation stone, and therefore there is an equality, there's a mutuality and a reciprocity about relationship that takes away some of those dynamics. So yeah, I'd love to have 47 million, and we looked at a yurt, actually. That might be the simplest thing that we do, just a very simple yurt space that we can use.
Thank you. Perhaps I could bring in David Thomas at this point and your reflection on this, because this the House of One, the project, the vision arose 10 years ago, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, within the last decade, all these moves towards buildings coming together as symbols, chaplaincies probably as well, quite recent. How do you regard this movement within the interfaith sector, I'm going to put it that way, of providing buildings to do the work?
Thank you very much. I'm a historian of Christian-Muslim relations, and I must say that my experience of working for many years as an academic in Christian-Muslim relations is one that makes me feel very cautious about the endeavors that are going on. Because Christians and Muslims, and to some extent Jews as well, to the extent that I know, have almost never been able to get on side by side in peace for very long. I applaud what is happening here, and I applaud especially the House of One. I think as people of faith are realizing that they are very often living in a world where faith means very little to people, at least on an explicit level. People of faith are realizing that they have more in common than they ever thought before. I think the House of One is a very challenging building. It has 3 separate rooms and 1 communal room. And therefore, the doors in the House of One are of crucial importance. You have to keep the doors closed on occasions. When Christians are celebrating their Eucharist, it is common, it is custom to keep others away. When Muslims are celebrating prayers, it is only Muslims who line up, and very often Muslim men, who line up to make the very distinctive patterns that we see in mosques, and especially around the Kaaba in Mecca. And for Jews as well, there are activities that take place during worship that only Jews participate in. The 3 rooms in the House of One are rooms of exclusion. The doors are kept closed. The 1 communal space in the House of One is where people who come from those rooms are sharing together. What do they bring out of their separate rooms? What do they bring out of their exclusions into the inclusionary space? They could either bring out nothing, in which case they are not really sharing, or they can bring out so much that it ceases to be distinctive. How do they retain their identity? And Imam Oers mentioned this at the very beginning. How do they retain their identity at the same time as showing true respect for those who come from other rooms? It's a very challenging building indeed. I very much hope it works. I very much hope that we might be meeting in a few years' time with the 47 million having been accumulated, the building and people actually as religious people, no, not as religious people, as people of distinct and different religions, in many ways contradictory religions, living together, recognizing the difference between them, and at the same time being able, honestly and sincerely, to respect what they find in other faiths. An immense challenge, but one that I'm sure the God who all three religions recognize in their separate, in some ways complementary, but very often different ways, he will be looking on, he, she will be looking on and giving blessing to.
Thank you. I'll bring in Sophia in a moment, if I may, just to answer some of those questions. Could I go to Qari Asim from the chair of the MINAB? Qari, what's your reflection? Do you share some of those reservations? How do you see the project?
Thank you, Ruth. Firstly, I'm really thrilled to hear about the House of One project, and I think it's a fascinating, fantastic idea. Also cautioned by David, I think, which is those reservations are realistic, and we need to manage those expectations. But for theology to aside, I think nothing can be more powerful than people spending time together, learning together, and cooperating with others. Now, I appreciate that there are going to be exclusive rooms because we are distinct in so many ways in terms of our beliefs and practices, but also Abrahamic faiths do have a lot more in common than perhaps that which divides us. So it's really the fourth room that's going to be the key in this House of One project, because this House of One project or other such projects are not going to be a cup of tea for everyone. But what this house does allow is a shared space to celebrate our togetherness, our connectivity, how we can cooperate with each other, and such shared space between Muslims, Christians, and Jews will help build bridges between religious leaders, one hopes, and communities, as well as foster peace and harmony in an area, in an area in terms of Berlin, which has historical issues, but also in an era that is too often defined by difference. So I really look forward to seeing the House of One reach fruition. And I think from Islamic perspective, we have precedent where people have shared space to offer their distinct prayers. And the multi-faith rooms, in a way, show that actually all of that can happen in practice, albeit sometimes it's more driven by the need and the challenges rather than people's choice and preference. But we have precedent from the past, and it is currently happening right now in spaces, and therefore I really look forward to having more of these shared spaces in London and in our country. Thank you,
Qari. Can I come back to you, Sophia, just as we come towards the end of the hour, to answer some of those points that you've heard from our guest theologians all around the UK. What do you make of David's reservations there and the place of that room in the middle?
Absolutely, we are aware of those reservations, and it's a balance, right? I mean, we try to keep people on board who are very traditional, and we absolutely agree that it needs the three spaces, and they can also close the doors. And that's, I think, what makes the project unique, is to have that mutual space. And I think what makes it also unique is that it is a structure that's supposed to stay there. It's not a temporary thing, which we have a lot of interreligious, I think there's a lot of projects with interreligious dialogue, but the special thing about the House of One, it's something to remain there and for communities to grow. And it is exactly what we heard in the last comment, is to start to get to know each other, to become familiar with something that is foreign at first, and hopefully by becoming more familiar with something, experiencing each other's traditions, to also help prevent walls that don't need to be there. But we would certainly agree that, and that's a signature piece, I think, of the concept, is that we do have those 3 rooms, and that they are or can be secluded, and that there is a certain protection. Actually, one comment we hear a lot about the architecture is that with the type of building, it looks very closed up. Some people would appreciate more transparency or more openness. But it is also, the architects would argue that it is also for protection and for keeping each tradition as it is. We in no way try to make it one mutual religion or tradition, and that the transparency comes from, it's a very simple, in a way, building. It's not simple at all to build it, but what you see outside with those bricks is also what you see inside. And the idea is to take part of the outside world, like the PETRIPLATZ, that communal space, also to the inside, to the 4th room. And yeah, have the transparency through the vision of the brick walls, essentially.
I'd just like to ask you, in your negotiations, you've been together, the whole project's been together for 10 years, whether in the discussions that you've had over issues like that, and the construction of the building and the shape and the pattern and everything else, there's been some breaking down of the exclusivity of faiths, and a greater ability to be more fluid in approach, belief, and custom and practice.
Osman, you're a lot longer with the project and more on the content side. Would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, hearing all that, first of all, thank you very much for all your appreciation of the project House of One. And I would say, of course, there are a couple of challenges we faced within the 10 years, and we had a lot of steps which were all a challenge for itself. Yeah, starting with our Charter 2011, which was the first ground of the idea, actually, and then going on and having the architectural competition we had in 2012, following our crowdfunding campaign 2014, which is still going on, and funding the house. And besides that, of course, we all have different kind of challenges which we have to tackle when we come together and meet and want to pray, for instance, together. These are also things, little challenges we have. How do we pray? Where are our borders? How far can I go? What can I say, and what is appropriate, etc. And these kind of challenges, and this is also a learning process. I would say this is a process which is going on and will go on a long in the future, which will not end maybe. And we are not able to solve all the problems, but we are making small steps, I would say. And this is also inspiration for us, and this is also inspiration for others.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us for this panel discussion today. I can certainly put you in touch with one another, all the panelists, because I think there's probably some commonality of interest, and perhaps you met for the first time, which has been exciting to see. There's an invitation. Thank you very much, Sophia, in the chat box for your opening ceremony on Thursday, and we wish you well for that. And thank you so much for your presentations, everybody, and for sparing the time to join the discussion. Do join us again, and in the meanwhile, stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.